Hi, this is Sarah Perlman from Vassar College. Unfortunately, I cannot be there in person, so I'm sending this video of my discussant comments on Teresa's paper in lieu of an in-person commentary. So this paper looks at the differential impact of pollution on educational attainment by gender. And one of the really interesting findings is that increased pollution exposure in the second trimester is associated with reduced high school attainment, but only for women. And of course, the novelty of the paper is not only documenting this, but exploring one explanation, which is that this difference is a result of differential rates of entry into white-collar and blue-collar jobs. And in general, I found the paper to be very well written and to offer a nice new explanation for differential responses to cognitive shocks by gender. But of course, my job is to try and make the paper even better, so I will focus on suggestions for Teresa going forward. So my first suggestion is to just focus on high school rather than educational attainment overall. So the paper models this individual education and occupation decision, and I think I had a hard time dealing with that up until the focus on high school, because prior to a certain age, it's parents who are making the educational decisions, not individuals. And high school, it seems to me, provides a clearer point when the individual, rather than their parents, is making an educational decision. So that's one first reason to focus on this. And the second reason, of course, is all of the action that you're getting seems to be on high school. So I would just rewrite the paper with that in mind. So a second point is about the reduced form, and all of my commentary will be on that. And mainly, I would like more clarification on the white-collar interaction term in the reduced form. So the key coefficient in the reduced form, it took me a while to figure this out, is it's not a triple interaction, but it's a control that is gender-specific. And so in general, I wasn't entirely sure how to get from column 1 to column 2 in table 3. And that's really key to your story, so I think it's important the reader understands that link. And so the negative coefficient on this double interaction term, if I'm interpreting it correctly, means that high school attainment falls for men in areas with large white-collar male job shares as well as for women. So in order to get the negative gender interaction overall without these controls, these white-collar controls, that means that women have higher white-collar job shares than men. But I'm not totally sure how you get there, because the white-collar job shares are defined by gender-specific distributions. They're binary indicators. So again, a little more explanation of how I should think about this interaction term, really what it's telling me, would be useful. And of course, that led me to wonder if a triple difference across areas and time based on women's white-collar shares is feasible, right? And I think that's a clearer heterogeneity analysis. This gender gap is more clearly being driven by certain areas over others. And then kind of the main issue is the story, right? So the general story is that pollution increases, right? And then you get this long arrow to reduced high school attainment for women. But there's a lot in between that long arrow, right? So pollution increases, that leads to a reduction in ability, and no difference in that between men and women. And so that leads to a lower return to high school education if you're going into a white-collar job. And so this differentially affects women because women are more likely to go into white-collar jobs. So here's another alternative story that might explain that first long arrow. The manifestation of cognitive impairment differs by gender. This is a story of boys being bad at school is attributed to a host of potential problems, while girls being bad at school is attributed to cognitive deficiencies. And then we have a different set of arrows. Increased pollution lowers ability, but that only reduces the perceived return to high school education for girls and not so for boys. And so these perceptions are more likely to occur where more people go to high school, so where there are more white-collar jobs. And so as a result, you see a decline in high school attainment for women, but not men. So I was wondering if you could test this alternative channel and maybe rule it out by seeing if this gender gap persists in areas where both white-collar job shares are low. in which case you shouldn't see that this is happening. And then finally, some other concerns. So in general, I was wondering if you can provide more information on the white-collar job shares. What is the correlation across regions, particularly between men and women? Do we see that there's a high correlation? And I was wondering if educational attainment can affect Raven scores. Figure 8.3 suggests it might. And so can you talk more about the Raven scores being an independent measure of ability? So in conclusion, thank you very much for providing an opportunity to read this paper. I really enjoyed it a lot, and I regret not being able to see the other papers in the session. Thank you. And thank you to Julia for organizing.